Millions of people wake up every single morning and reach for coffee. Before doing anything else, before water, before breakfast, before the body has had a single minute to transition out of its overnight state. It feels like fuel. It feels like the starting gun for the day. But what is actually happening inside your stomach and your hormonal system during those first few minutes is something most coffee drinkers have never been told about. Today we are going to go through the exact science of what fasting coffee does to your gut, your stress hormones, and your esophagus, and then we are going to tell you how to keep every single benefit of coffee while eliminating the damage. The answer is not to quit coffee. It is to shift the clock. To understand the problem, you first need a clear picture of what the stomach looks like when it is empty. A fasting stomach is never truly empty. It already contains gastric acid at a pH between 1.5 and 3.5, which is roughly as acidic as battery acid. What keeps the stomach wall from digesting itself is a thick mucus barrier that lines every centimeter of the inner stomach surface. When that mucus layer is intact, the acid stays neutralized at the wall surface. When that mucus layer thins or breaks down, acid begins attacking the cells beneath it. That is the starting point for gastritis, ulcers, and chronic gut irritation. Now here is what happens. The moment coffee arrives into that fasting environment, 3 simultaneous reactions occur. The instant fasting coffee reaches your stomach. The first is a surge in gastric acid secretion. Coffee contains caffeine, chlorogenic acid, and other bitter compounds. A study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences confirmed that caffeine stimulates gastric acid secretion through bitter taste receptors in the stomach lining, and the mechanism is significantly more complex and potent than previously understood. Chlorogenic acid, one of the most abundant polyphenols in coffee, adds a secondary gastric acid stimulation signal. The result is a rapid increase in acid output at a time when there is no food in the stomach to absorb or buffer it. That excess acid has nowhere useful to go and begins directly irritating the unprotected stomach lining. The second reaction is relaxation of the lower esophageal sphincter. This sphincter is the muscular valve that separates your stomach from your esophagus. When it is firmly closed, stomach acid stays where it belongs. When it relaxes, acid can flow upward. A clinical study confirmed that caffeine, at a dose of 3.5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, which is roughly what is found in 1 to 2 cups of coffee, significantly decreased lower esophageal sphincter, basal pressure, and reduced distal esophageal contraction strength. Critically, a study specifically examining coffee's effect on acid reflux found that fasting coffee increased acid reflux time significantly in patients with existing reflux disease, while the same amount of coffee consumed after a meal produced no such increase. The empty stomach is the deciding factor. The third reaction is a cortisol and catecholamine spike on top of an already peaked cortisol curve. This is the part most people have never heard about. For approximately the first 30 to 60 minutes after waking, your body undergoes what researchers call the cortisol awakening response. This is a naturally programmed surge in cortisol that helps your brain and body transition into the active daytime state. Cortisol levels during this window are at their highest point of the entire day. Research published in a peer-reviewed journal confirmed that caffeine consumption increases cortisol secretion, both at rest and during stress, even in regular daily coffee drinkers. Adding caffeine to an already peaked cortisol level drives cortisol into a state of excess. Excess cortisol suppresses the synthesis of the protective mucus that lines your stomach wall, raises blood glucose through liver glucose output, and temporarily increases insulin resistance. In other words, fasting coffee creates the worst possible combination for your gut: maximum acid output, paired with minimum mucosal protection. Now for the important nuance. The direct causal link between fasting coffee and structural stomach ulcers in completely healthy people has not been definitively proven in large-scale long-term trials. Some studies in healthy volunteers found no clear evidence of lasting mucosal damage from fasting coffee alone. But this does not mean the practice is safe for everyone. For people who already have gastroesophageal reflux disease, gastritis, peptic ulcers, Helicobacter pylori infection, or a tendency toward acid overproduction. Fasting coffee presents a real, scientifically supported risk. Evidence linking coffee reduction to an 80% decrease in acid reflux symptoms is particularly striking, and the consistent finding that fasting timing specifically drives the reflux increase, while post-meal coffee does not, points clearly to timing as the critical variable. Coffee itself is not a harmful beverage. When consumed at the right time and in reasonable amounts, it delivers meaningful health benefits. Multiple epidemiological and clinical studies on coffee and liver health have found that regular coffee consumption reduces the risk of liver fibrosis and cirrhosis and improves liver enzyme levels. The polyphenols in coffee, particularly chlorogenic acid, exert antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects, and serve as prebiotics that feed beneficial gut bacteria. Research has also linked regular coffee consumption to reduced risk of Parkinson's disease, improved cognitive function, and lower incidence of type 2 diabetes. The problem is never the coffee. It is when and how you drink it. So when is the ideal time to drink your morning coffee? Based on research into cortisol awakening response, the optimal window is 90 to 120 minutes after waking. A doctor and researcher specializing in neurological performance made this concept widely known, explaining that adding caffeine during the natural cortisol peak not only amplifies side effects, but also accelerates caffeine tolerance, meaning your coffee becomes progressively less effective over time. Waiting until cortisol has begun its natural morning decline means the caffeine delivers full, alertness-enhancing effects without the hormonal collision. If you wake at 7 a.m., your ideal coffee window is approximately 9 to 9:30 a.m. The broader window of 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. is often cited as a sweet spot where cortisol has dropped from its morning peak. But the afternoon energy dip has not yet begun. You do not need a full meal before coffee. Even a small amount of food, 20 to 30 minutes before your first cup, significantly buffers the gastric acid problem. A few tablespoons of oats, half a banana, 2 whole grain crackers, or a small handful of nuts is enough to partially neutralize the acid environment and provide a protective surface for the stomach lining. A few safety notes are essential. Anyone diagnosed with gastroesophageal reflux disease, gastritis, or peptic ulcers should discuss coffee consumption directly with their doctor, as the appropriate timing and amount vary by individual condition. If you are over 40 and have never been tested for Helicobacter pylori, a test is worth considering. H. pylori infection compromises the stomach's mucosal defenses, and repeated acid stimulation from any source, including coffee, accelerates damage in an already compromised stomach. Pregnant individuals are generally advised to limit caffeine to under 200 milligrams per day, which means monitoring total coffee volume carefully. A standard cup contains roughly 80 to 120 milligrams. If you experience persistent heartburn, frequent regurgitation, or chronic stomach pain, these are symptoms that warrant medical evaluation. Not just a change in coffee timing. Coffee does not need to be your enemy. It has a genuinely impressive scientific record of benefit when used correctly. The shift is simple: wait 90 to 120 minutes after waking. Eat something small first. Choose your brewing method thoughtfully, and skip the sugar and syrup. That single change in timing protects your stomach lining, respects your cortisol curve, and lets you collect every health benefit coffee actually has to offer. Your gut will adjust within a week, and your morning energy will surprise you.